This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching with today's video that has two short parts. Hand stitching related to the Pineapple Block, a part 2, and Quilt as you go related to the strip quilt that I've been working on, and I had another idea and I thought I'd add that. That would be part 4 for that strip quilt. When I stopped the other day, I had put one row around on our pineapple and added the squares on the corner. And as I looked at that beginning block in the center and I was looking at the points, I realized that if you turned it over and looked at it after you had finished those boxes, you could see if your points were good or not. And if you were not close right here, you could actually come back and make a little seam, put your edges together and put a little seam, and then turn it over and see if you were closer. And if you were, this particular one was a little bit too far in, and you could take it out, but I didn't choose to do that on that. So when I got that far, I thought, I'm kind of interested in this way this green business is going to go, this green and yellow, because I'd always done it with the blues and the yellow. And when I showed it to my husband, he said, well, that looks like, when you held it up, looked like stained glass window. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep going and I'm going to hand stitch it because I like hand stitching. So I just pulled myself up to the TV and I started hand stitching this one, and I went all the way around. And one of the suggestions, one of the things we had was a set of strips that you could use to get the lengths for your different sides. And I suggested that you do that, or that you could just use a strip and add it. Well, I really am a believer now in these strips, because when I'd add a strip, I could tell if my 1/4 inch seams were right or not. If you didn't have enough room on the edge, then your seams were too big, and vice versa. So using those strips was a good thing. The other thing was, as your strips get longer, when I got to the 9.5 wasn't too bad. When you get to the 11, you may want to take and put your strip on there, pin it down, then go to the center and go out to an edge, and then turn it over and start at the center and go out. Either way, but after a while I did get where it was easy to start at one end and then go to the other end. So I went ahead and I did that one. Well, then that got me going, and I did another one. One of them I pressed the seams open on the inside, and one of them I pressed them to the sides, and you can't really tell the difference. And like I said, it really depends on whether you're going to machine stitch it to quilt it or if you're going to hand stitch. But you really, when you look at the pillow, you'll see that it wasn't really necessary to do any of that. If you've done nice stitches, it's going to stay together and that you won't need the quilting. But I've been just really curious about that business about opening your seams and closing your seams. And I tended to like to open my seams because I hand stitched all the time and I didn't want that bulk. And so just yesterday I found an article in one of my quilt tip books. This was from 2009, and I eased down here for you. It says, pressing the seams to one side goes back to the American method of hand piecing. Pressing them open would allow the batting to form bearding or work its way through the running stitch seam. As the machine's seam will be tighter and firmer than hand sewing, this is less of a risk, and modern batting is less likely to beard than the loose fiber batting used 100 years ago. And occasionally you may have to press the seam open to reduce the bulk. And that answered my question about which was the best way to do it. So that took care of the pressing. And then I got down to the added part I was telling you about. When I got the top done And if I was going to quilt it, I would put my batting on the back, of course, and then go on ahead and quilt it for this. But if I was going to leave it just like it was, I'd still add a piece of batting to the back, and then I'd add a piece of scrap cloth. And it just adds something to the feel of the pillow. It's amazing. My sister said, "What'd you do to the pillow?" I said, "I didn't do anything." And then I realized that I had added that extra part to it before I actually filled the pillow. And then for the back, just chose a fabric I liked. Again, added a layer of batting, added a piece of scrap, and then you can hand quilt it real quickly. You can do it on your machine, and you're ready to fix your pillow. And you remember the other day, a good tool is worth a lot. Well, my scissors, one pair, was not a good tool that day. And sometimes I try to buy something that will help me maintain my tools. And this one is one that I found that I really like, and that's why I want to tell you about it. It's a Fiskars, and it sharpens your scissors. It's a matter of just sliding the scissor in, holding it, then shutting it and sliding it back out of there. And after about 2 or 3 times doing that, it's amazing how much you can cut with those scissors that you thought were about ready for the trash can. That's the end of this section about our pineapple block. This is about the strip quilt from the other videos, and this is really, hopefully, going to be the last part that I add to this. It has been so much fun. I just tell you, I did add my quilting going down the strip that was in there, and that added a nice touch, and added a nice touch to the back, so you might think about that. But when I was thinking about the strips, you remember, originally we took the strips and we put them on the paper and sewed those on. And I said, well, maybe this is a good way that we could do this and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So I went and I got the piece of batting that was the same length, because remember, I'm trying to use up that batting. I've done a good job, but I've still got some left. So I went ahead and I laid that batting strip on top of my adding machine tape. And then I started adding strips just like I did before. And for some reason, it was actually more fun putting it on there. And then just do the same way, do a press, and then turn it over and take and peel the paper out. Then remember to make your stitches smaller. I think my machine set it at 2.4 and I'd made it 2.3. And so when I take and mash this over and mash it a little bit and then get ready to tear it, it comes out really easily. And the one thing I noticed was that my seams on the top didn't come loose when I was tearing the paper off. And I thought, well, this is ready to go then when I get that paper off. And it makes some really nice strips. And it's already got the felt on it. You've already got some quilting done because they're stitched together. So as you use your pieces of fabric strips, think about that. Add your batting first as you're doing them. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope this has helped you. These are just some notes that I have from doing these 2 projects that we've been talking about.